follows in the footsteps. So here is the translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. Report by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. People in general always require a leader who can teach the public by practical behavior. A leader cannot teach the public to stop smoking if he himself smokes. Lord Chaitanya said that a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. One who teaches in that way is called Acharya, or the ideal teacher. Therefore, a teacher must follow the principles of Shastra or scripture to teach the common man. The teacher cannot manufacture rules against the principles of revealed scriptures. The revealed scriptures like Manu Samhita and similar others are considered the standard books to be followed by human society. Thus the leader's teaching should be based on the principles of such standard shastras. One who desires to improve himself must follow the standard rules as they are practiced by the great teachers. The Srimad Bhagavatam also affirms that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees, and that is the way of progress on the path of spiritual realization. The king or the executive head of a state, the father, and the school teacher are all considered to be natural leaders of the innocent people in general. All such natural leaders have a great responsibility to their dependents. Therefore, they must be conversant with standard books of moral and spiritual codes. Srila Prabhupada. So I wanted to make a little summary of the chapter before we go into this verse, because I'm not sure how you are situated, that's why. So chapter 3, it's Karma Yoga, and in English it's called the Yoga of Prescribed Duty. And in the index, at the beginning of the Gita, you'll see the index, and in that, Srila Prabhupada gives the summary of the chapter in a few words. So we'll just read that. Prabhupada says that in this chapter, the summary is like this: everyone must engage in some sort of activity in this material world, but actions can either bind one to the world or liberate one from the world. By acting for the pleasure of the Supreme, without selfish motives, one can be liberated from the law of karma, which is action and reaction, and attain transcendental knowledge of the self and the Supreme. So, in the beginning of the chapter, Arjuna says, okay, let me just do the Jnana Yoga because that seems to be easy and does not involve any fighting. But then Krishna says that actually you are not qualified for Jnana Yoga, so you go for Karma Yoga because Karma Yoga is better. And it is better for self-realization. Because for self-realization we need to purify our senses. And we could purify the senses by philosophical discussion, or we could purify senses by doing arti, doing actual action. So Krishna says to Arjuna that it's very difficult for you to do the Jnana Yoga and purify your senses, so you do the Karma Yoga. And that's how the chapter begins. And then Krishna says that even if you're not qualified for Karma Yoga, you do Karma Kanda. So we have those middle few verses where we spoke about the Karma Kanda, which means you do sacrifices for Devi Devatas and get the necessary ingredients for your life. But ultimately those blessings will come from Vishnu. So that section discussed about the Karma Kanda section. And then we moved on in the discussion that Krishna says that even if you are qualified for Jnana Yoga, even if you are into highly philosophical understanding, you can go to Aranya, you can go to forest and actually meditate there, or you can do the study of all the Vedas. You may be qualified, but still, Arjuna, you do the Karma Yoga. And why? Because to set the right example for people. And Arjuna being in a very important position, he was the prince, he was in the kingly order, he was a Kshatriya, he was fighting from the Pandava side who were trying to establish the religious principles. So he was in a greatly important role. And Krishna said that you have a duty to prove it to the world. So by your own example, and that's why I recommend that this karma yoga should be continued. Do not go for and same thing will apply to many of us, and we will discuss that in this verse also. So here we are at this point in the summary that which is I think the verses from 17 to 24. That section we are dealing with right now. That Krishna says that even if you are qualified for Jnana Yoga, still you do Karma Yoga to set the right examples. So this is the summary until now, what we have covered so far. And so this is a very important verse, in general applicable to all of us, all the times. It doesn't matter whether we are having this Gita today or 100 years later or 500 years ago. This is a timeless wisdom, and especially this verse will be valid in the human society irrespective of the time, place or circumstance, or religious background or cultural background, anything. This is really a universal instruction. So whatever action a great man performs, the people will follow in general. And also what standards they set for people, everybody will try to follow those standards. And in today's world, this elections and everything, the politics and all these things going on, it's very well discussed matter that whatever action the leaders are performing, the whole world is watching them, and people have different ideologies based on those leaders. And so Krishna in one sense is warning that whatever standards these people set, those standards become the norm of the common people, and they can be really taking people to a higher level, or they can degrade people. And that's what we will discuss, because I think Prabhupada also in his purport is pointing out that it's very important that people who are in this position are responsible, right? So I'm going to ask you questions, okay? So it's not going to be boring, hopefully not. If you can. So Krishna uses this word Shrestha, and Srila Prabhupada has translated as a respectable leader. So we have a lot of leaders in the society, in the community, in the family system, right? So a lot of leaders. And Prabhupada mentions 3 leaders in the purport. If anybody can remember, they can say, who's the first type of leader Prabhupada mentions in the purport?
King.
Or people in the administration, like people in the, right? So that's good. And who's the second? Father and parent, mother also. So Prabhupada didn't mention particularly, but of course it means father and mother, parent. And the third one is teacher, for the children. So these are very influential people, and we all grew up as children. So we all had our teachers, and our teachers, our mother, father, they made that people who we are today. So, and as I mentioned about the pramana means standard. So they have to create the pramana. And Prabhupada very clearly says that they cannot create the pramana whimsically. That today I am the leader, I have the power, either in the house, in the house also we have the leaders, right? We take turns, I think, we take turns being leaders, but because for the children there has to be a leader, right? And for the mother, for the wife, there has to be a husband, for husband there has to be wife. So we are leaders in one sense, and in the community, when we go to the temple, there are leaders. School, there are leaders. Office, there are leaders, right? So if they start making their standards whimsically, that today my standard is this because I am in power, then it would be a chaos, right? It would be a chaos. So Prabhupada mentions that this pramana has to be based on Shastra, on the scripture. So the leaders have to be, first of all, knowledgeable. They themselves must have heard, understood from their teachers what is the standard behavior, what is the moral behavior, what is ethical behavior, what is religious behavior, everything, and then based upon their understanding, they have to act out the same. So in that way, they create the standard, moral standard and spiritual standard, and not whimsically manufacture. So we could take some examples that how a whimsical standard created by a leader can create a trouble. Or sometimes people take the leadership, even if nobody has given them the leadership, they take the leadership and they start implementing some things, right? So anybody can think of those, any example coming up in your mind? Whimsical, which is not based upon any standard shastra, or it keeps changing because it's whimsical. Today that standard, that person says, this is my standard. Tomorrow the same person might say, I have a different standard, or it may be replaced by another person who comes and has his own standard or her own standard. Yeah.
So I believe in Texas, their education curriculum was changed, and the Bible is now part of, like, it's like mandatory in the curriculum, and I believe like it was almost like a unanimous vote. So I believe the people who voted for it, after it's actually implemented, I believe that they're gonna protest for change, because I don't think many people like that change.
So you're saying like those, they were in power, so they tried to bring something which is not necessarily sustainable, and that's a good example. Yeah. And sometimes we see these activities, of some religious people, and they announce that if you are not following our standards, our faith, then you are doomed, you are condemned. So their activities or their standards are like isolated because they created themselves and they do not care for other society. They are also sometimes self-obsessed, like, okay, I need to achieve this standard, I need to implement this goal of mine, and they just go on and do that. Or sometimes they're so self-centered. So not thinking about the society, not thinking about the welfare of people is not appropriate if the leader has to create the standard. The leader has to think about people and their welfare, right? So that's why it's their duty. So being a leader is not sounds like it's not easy, right? In this, so because you have to be very, very responsible, and it said walk your talk. So they have to understand, first of all, they have to actually behave, and then they have to teach, or they have to expect from other people, right? So we have role models, right? Not just the leaders, but they are not pronounced as leaders, but they are leaders in one sense because they are role models. So what all, I mean, you all grew up in a different cultural background. You didn't grow up here in this country. So what were your role models in your days when you were young, or in your school days? And how do you think these things are changing? How can we all discuss a little bit on that? Wait, you gotta turn, let me see if anybody else wants to talk.
Like teacher.
Teachers?
When we were just studying in India, the teacher was a teacher. He was respected. Whenever he was talking, whatever he was saying, you're learning from their example. Now teacher means that job. Teacher doesn't mean that giving some knowledge as shiksha to us. Now teacher means job. You're simply doing my job, I'm doing my job. I don't care about what you are doing. That's change.
Right, so probably you're saying the teachers were aware of the moral values, so they thought it's a part of their job to actually teach a moral value to the students, right? Nowadays only lesson plan. No moral value.
And
that's
they have to follow specific curriculum or standard. There is no flexibility.
No flexibility, yes, no creativity because of that, right? Yeah. So that does affect the way they deliver the knowledge to the kids, right? So
even politicians, right? Earlier they used to be a very good politicians, like
absolutely.
Gandhiji, right? But nowadays politicians are also corrupt. Yeah,
Politicians mean business. They're
Yeah,
investing money to earn money. Nothing else. They're nothing else.
But as you're saying, like earlier, at least there was some morality, right? Even in politicians, there was some standard.
The politicians, teacher, doctor, these are not called as a service, business. It all are for the serve to serve. They are not, those are not for the earning. Those things are for to serve.
Yes,
But
and
not
they are
everything
also
is
influential. You said doctors, they are influential people, so they are leaders in one sense, right? Yeah, that's a good example. Yes. So even and what has happened now? Like, what are some of your role models now? Somebody raise your hand.
My role model is like my grandparents because like they've experienced so much before, and like I think I could really like look up to them. And like whatever, me and my mom were talking about this before, but like she was telling me how I should like stay in touch with my grandparents because like they've experienced more like than even my own parents have. And they could like provide me insight while I grow up.
That's great, wonderful. Your grandparents can be such a good resource. Yeah.
I would say my parents, because when you're growing up, your parents are like, they give you the values that you use in life, and then how you grow up, like when you grow up, what you become is just how you use those values in life.
Yes.
So, but like parents are honestly really important. I mean, I agree with her point as well, because grandparents are important.
Yeah,
but,
parents, grandparents, same thing, right?
yeah.
That's great. I mean, that you recognize the value of their teachings right now, because a lot of time we only realize after a long time, oh, my parent was telling me this. So to recognize on time is great. Great. I don't know what how your parents are able to convince you that way.
When I was little, I really I still admire my great grandfather. He's like,
Great grand.
yeah, he's partially blind and he's like, he's fully deaf. And when I was little, I would always like look up to him because each time like he would wake up every day at like 5 a.m. And he would like go in the river and like bath, and then he would come back and he would like sit down. He wouldn't ask anyone else to make his food. He would like whatever was there, he would take it for himself. And he was really patient. He always said, he never like told even like my grandparents, like he never pressured them into doing anything, and like that's why I really respect him.
Wow, that's amazing, because you have these impressions, for the rest of your life, right? And those kind of things. Great.
You are still little.
Yeah. When I was like 5, I was
Right. And literally, like nowadays, I think the movie stars and the sports stars and business people and politicians, singers, all they become the role models. So some of them make a good influence, like try to improve the society, but some of them do not care. So I was thinking about literally in the 3 modes of nature, this kind of leadership. Because say in the mode of goodness, we took some examples, like this is the leadership in the mode of goodness, that the grandparents and the parents, they care about their responsibility and they try to give good moral values. But sometimes the leadership is in the mode of passion, and people just want to give the knowledge to the people to get something in return, either power or money or stuff like that. And we have seen the examples of this leadership in the mode of ignorance, where they themselves are confused, they are completely not aware of what is good and what is bad for themselves, and then they execute in the society, and the society is never benefited, and everything is by disadvantage. So there are things like that, and literally what kind of leaders the society has, that reflects upon the society's behavior. We took the examples, positive and negative both. So that's why it's very important. Prabhupada really points out that the responsibility of the leader is that they need to elevate the society and not degrade by their own actions, by their own words. And one favorite topic is about parenting, parents as leaders, because that concerns all of us, whether we are students or whether we are parents. So one good thing I heard recently is that, see, the power of example, because you as parent, you cannot, 90% you will teach by your behavior to your children, and by 10% maybe by words. You can do this, don't do this, do this, don't do this, but basically the child will look at you and will see what you are doing, and then they will accordingly follow. So teaching them by example is very important. I'm sure you'll all agree. So the power of example is very important, and it's bigger than, they say, the example of power. So I'm saying the power of example is bigger than the example of power. So what could be the example of power? Where somebody is using the power and trying to teach, or maybe parent or not.
Getting the kid and getting
Make a discipline, and but you are not behaving, only you are putting on discipline, right? So that one could be one example. Not only in parenting, but there could be other examples where we are trying to use the power to give the example. Like for example, in religious circle, sometimes people use the power and say, this is we believe, if you follow, that's fine, otherwise you're condemned. So that's the power they're using to set the example, which is wrong.
Even in teaching,
Where?
teachers are also doing same thing, similar set, right? They're using power. No, you have to do this. This is what the rules are. Right?
Yes.
So you have to follow something.
Absolutely. So misuse of the power is always there.
Example would be at workplace.
Sorry.
The best example would be at workplace. The team lead won't follow the rules, but they want the entire team to.
Everyone will clap hand now. Right?
Same thing with the doctors, Mataji.
Doctors.
Doctors smoke, then they says it's just for the health.
Yeah, right?
They even smoke before going operation.
Right? And the patient like, I can't bear that smell. Yeah, so those are so many examples, like the example of power. But the power of example, like you set the example by your experience, by your behavior, that can be very powerful, as you were saying about your great-grandparent. Just by watching them, that goes deep in your heart. Prabhupada, they take the example of Srila Prabhupada. What did he do?
Translated the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, but no, in general, like to bring Bhakti Yoga.
He brought ISKCON to America. The devotees that were doing drugs and alcohol, he stopped them and gave them prasadam. He fed them with his hands. He cooked food with his hands. He washed their own paint with his hands.
Yeah, so many things he actually did. And then he spoke, right? And most of the things you mentioned, they were actions.
Yeah.
Like he cooked for them, right? Yeah.
Instead of giving them like a really long seminar, he would try to keep it short, and instead of giving them like by words, he would try to use his actions to set an example for them. And so, as a lot of people say, he turned hippies into happies.
Yes, right? So, just in principle, when he left India and when he came here, or even within India, whatever he was doing to spread Bhakti Yoga, it was all by example. He was going himself, he was creating Back to Godel magazines. When he came here at this age of 70, that was itself an example, right? And then, as you mentioned, both of you mentioned, like how he convinced people who were foreigners, who were young people, who were into drug addicts. How did he do that? So by his own example. So that's what when we talk about this verse, the best example is Srila Prabhupada, how he has actually proved that we can, as leaders, we can influence the people more than anything else, right? So that is Srila Prabhupada. And also when this Hare Krishna movement was forming, you remember George Harrison? So he was great, we all know Beatles, he was world famous in all the countries. And then he was a very spiritual person. He approached a lot of yogis, but then he approached Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada told him that what can you do for people? Because you are such a great leader, everybody listens to you, and you have these skills, the musical skills, and you can influence people in a tremendous way. So Prabhupada said, I suggest that you take up Mahamantra, you make musical records, and you try to use your example to convince people about this Chaitanya's movement. And that's what George Harrison did. He created these Hare Krishna records that become world famous, and so many people started chanting Hare Krishna, which otherwise they would not have. So George Harrison is a great example of a leader. It says is my page. And Krishna says, yes, yat pramanam. So George Harrison, if he would have acted whimsically, then he would not have been able to influence people spiritually in that deeper way. But he didn't act whimsically. He actually approached a spiritual master, and the spiritual master instructed him based upon the Shastra, and that's how he acted, and that's how it made a long-lasting impact. So that's what it's yat pramanam. Krishna is saying that make a standard, and Prabhupada is explaining that standard should be based upon the real value, based upon scripture, based upon the Manu Samhita, based upon Srimad Bhagavad Gita and things like that. So as parents, again, we have to make use of this when we are trying to teach our children, because these things are explaining to us as to what should be my behavior before I tell my daughter, my son, how can I control my anger, my speech, my different habits, so then my children will watch me. So pramanam is very important. And see, if you take Arjuna's example now as leader, in the beginning, Arjuna is a very sensible person, right? Prabhupada mentions that he has a very gentle heart, very, very compassionate heart, and that's why he was able to think about the soldiers on the other side and feel compassion. So he was well aware of his responsibility, and that's why he was confused, actually, because he was well aware of his responsibility as a king. And in the beginning, if you see some of these verses, he is talking the same exact thing about his leadership responsibilities, and I'll just point out some of those. So he's saying in 39th verse, actually 31, 34 and 36 I'm going to refer to. So in the 31st verse he's saying, I do not see any good that can come from killing my own kinsmen. So he clearly sees that if I am the leader and if I have this war which I feel is whimsical, it's going to not bring any good to the society in general. Then he says that in the 34th, he says that not in the 34th, I think, in the 39, 36. He says that I think it's somewhere I mistake anyway. But anyway, he is pointing out that I do not want to fight because I am responsible for killing these people. So in that sense, Arjuna was also using this particular point that is later on explained, that he was very much thoughtful about the action that he was about to take, because he knew that if he would take a whimsical action and fight, then he would destroy the family tradition, then he would destroy the sanctity of the women, and then in the due course of time, in 10, 20 years, there would be unwanted population. So he was very much aware, and that's why he was very hesitant to take that action, which is a very great symptom of a leader, right? He would not go for his own agenda, like, no, I have to have this kingdom. Doesn't matter whether I destroy my family traditions, whether I destroy Kuru dynasty, whatever, I have to become the king. He did not think like that. So this is a great example of the leader. And but later on, Krishna actually turns around his argument, because that was not the right way of Arjuna to think like that, because he would not have been able to re-establish the religious principles, right? So he was thinking only from one perspective, but he was not thinking from a bigger perspective, and that's why then Krishna corrected him that actually, as a leader, you have to fight. Right now, it is better that you fight, because fighting will bring justice, and religious principles will be brought back. Actually, your dynasty will flourish if you right now fight and kill the other side. So in both ways, we see the example of how to be a leader in Arjuna's case, right? And then I was thinking is how we can have some more discussion about ourselves. again, as leaders in the house, in the society, in the community, right? So, what you all think, like how you are leaders, and how do you influence your dependents? Because some of you are parents, but some of you are not. So I'm keeping the question very general, not pointed to the parents, also pointed to you guys. Give some examples of, and it doesn't have to be just parents. You know, your family, like you are maybe the brother, you are the sister, you are the caretaker of your old aunt. There could be so many examples that you can think of where you use your responsibility, you know, and acted in a way that was beneficial to your family. Sometimes there are, say, wealth, you know, the inheritance issues, right? There's a land of four brothers. So I'm just asking examples, like, you know, so that you can think about yourself, because this has to relate to your life, right? Otherwise, what's the point? Do you guys know it's a social contract? Yeah, can you explain?
It's almost like a invisible deal between the government and the people, where like the people will like do whatever like they feel like is right, and the government won't interfere too much unless like they're doing something illegal.
Good. You want to say something?
Oh, I have to know what she was saying.
Okay, same thing. Yeah. So I'm asking you the examples, so I hope you're thinking about your personal examples, but in the meantime, we'll discuss this. So social contracting means like you agree to the rules and regulations of the government, as you said, so that everybody has convenience. Like for most easy example to understand is the traffic rules. Like, you know, you agree that when you see the red color, you need to stop so that you don't get into accident, other people don't get into accident, everybody can peacefully drive, right? So like that, there are so many rules and regulations, like income tax, you know, you all agree to pay income tax so that everybody has some township welfare act. So that's called social contracting. You contract with the society. So in that way, in that sense, I would say we have a great role to play, right? So we are already playing that role of a responsible leader, not necessarily leader, but a responsible citizen, right? So that we all can live peacefully.
The best example I see, Mataji, when I went to the Mumbai first time, there are always crowd everywhere, in the metro station, train station, bus station, even the queue on the toilets. They are living, most of the people living in the chawls. Everywhere is the crowd. So people don't have to tell them to make a queue. They automatically arrange the queue. So we don't have to nobody is managing them, nobody is monitoring them, but they automatically, discipline-wise, they create the queue. So it's a learning.
Yeah, it's a great, isn't it?
Learning.
Yeah.
But it's not always in all the cities. So it's especially I saw in the Mumbai.
That's great. That's great. That's a good observation. So people, you know, they just have a contract in the mind that this has to be. So my point is, we don't have to be in the leadership position for that, because we can be a part of that whole community, and we can follow the unspoken rules for the benefit of everybody. So, you know, you may say, oh, I'm not leader, so I don't have to worry about it. No, but we are all leader in one sense, or we are all given that responsibility, as you said, you know. So my point is that, you know, we have to be aware of our behaviors. And importantly, even though we are not into a leadership position, we sometimes represent something. For example, we are representing ISKCON when we go in, say, for example, in our community, right? Or even within our temple or outside our temple. We always are carrying that responsibility. And what we behave, people will say, oh, I know you are connected to ISKCON, so do you behave like this? So they connect our behavior with ISKCON. So it's very important we are responsible without sometimes knowing, without being consciously aware. So that is one example. And can anybody think of any other examples from their personal lives or from the temple life or community life, how we can be setting examples, pramana. Because, yeah.
Like for example, if you're like an elder sibling, then you can set an example for your younger one by doing the right thing. Because without doing the right thing yourself, you cannot be influencing younger kids younger than you. That like for example, if you tell them like what to do, but if you're not doing your duties or like what you're supposed to be doing yourself, then you cannot be.
Nice. Do you have any younger siblings here?
She's not here.
But yeah, she should have heard it. How about you? Well, how do you help each other?
I help him whenever like if he ever needs like my advice on something, like being older, I feel like I know a little more than him, not that much more, but like I feel like he always like gives me a say on like this is happening in school, like my teacher did this, like what do you think, and like what should I do?
Good, nice. I know it's a lot of benefits being brothers and sisters together.
So is it
Any
like taking care of your sick parent? Is that an example? I don't know.
Taking care of your sick
parent
Of
and
course. How that can be an example?
like our kids would see that.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I see that all the time. It doesn't have to be just our Hindu thing, but even other people like Christian, Muslim, like especially because I work in the hospital, I see when the people, sometimes they have such a good family tradition that they would not leave their parent at all until they are leaving the hospital. They would be there all the time. They take such a good care for their old parents. And I say, look at this. I mean, we say that, our culture, they also have a Sanskriti. They also have a wonderful culture sometimes. So that's a great example, yeah? Excuse me.
Selfless thing is littering. Littering. Throwing stuff everywhere.
Tell me about it, yeah. I remember when I was young, in the public park, I took the trash and I put it, and people laughed at me like, what are you doing? But that was in India. So, but yeah, that's a great example. Anything from our temple, because we are a temple community.
Putting shoes on the
So,
no, it's everyone's responsibility, I'm saying. So if one keep that, other will see that, we can keep it here. So other also follows.
In temple, Mataji, as a devotee, right, we have our own responsibility how to behave inside the temple community, right, when we are going for any big program or small program, right. So in that premises, how do you behave? Others are also watching on you, right? So that is like our responsibility. Anytime we are there, we should behave in a certain way.
Yes.
That if known people or unknown people, whoever is coming, they can learn something.
Absolutely, 100%. And what could be included in that? Just the behavior or anything else?
Yeah, like how behavior in a sense, like how you are serving, how you are greeting, like all those
right
things.
So it could include your language.
Yeah, your language, your gestures, how
body.
you are welcoming people, how you are valuing your own things, like whatever service you are doing, how much like a value you are giving to that.
Yes.
How you look.
That is sometimes you are not explaining to others, but people are watching on you silently, and that makes a big difference.
Absolutely, it's a very valid point. That just your words, your language, your body language, your attitude, your service attitude, your caring nature.
Caring nature, yes.
How you look.
And she mentioned an important point is your costume, your how you dress up, how you put your tilak. You're saying.
Yes, and kantimala, gopi dress.
Yes.
I would say in a temple, the kirtaneers, it's like the current generation, it's their job to encourage like the younger generation to like get more involved with kirtan, because after like they're like gonna get older, right, and they're gonna have like they won't be able to do kirtan anymore, then it's gonna be like the younger generation's responsibility to like fulfill their responsibility, and then so on and so forth, right? So like that's also their responsibility, otherwise like it'll be hard for us to like do kirtan.
Yes, very important kirtan leadership to pass on the right training to the younger generations. Yes.
selfless serving during the two best examples I get.
Uh-huh.
Without having
Oh, yes, 100%.
serving every day.
Thank you for pointing that.
Yeah, without taking their own food and serving everybody selflessly, and that is commendable.
Yes, and they have set their examples, right? Absolutely, 100%.
The kids are also following. The grandkids are also.
Grandkids following, right? Yes.
This kind of relates back to what Priyanshu said, but and I agree with him when he says that we should influence younger generations too. And in the temple, I'm sure there are a lot of little kids in the temple. I feel like when important Prabhujis come to give lectures at temple, I feel like we should I'm not gonna lie, I keep making this mistake all the time too. I keep talking and getting involved into other things when I'm supposed to be focusing. And honestly, I feel like their lectures are really helpful too, and I feel like they practically change a lot of lives. And I feel like if I can be an older sister to little kids and be active in the lecture and maybe just be attentive, then maybe younger generations the autistic could follow too and look up to.
Yeah, that's very important. How you behave in the temple classroom, right? Yes, very important. And one thing I noticed in the community hall, in the prasadam line, I honestly I never like to cut the line and go in the front, even though, but sometimes it seems like the new people are in the back and the line, for them the line never moves because we have all these what do you call the regular devotees or something, right? They call regular devotees. So something that I somebody can just hold the board. I feel like if I had time, I would sit there like a board. Please do not cut the lines. But that could be another example.
Etiquettes, that Vaishnava etiquette, we learn
Vaishnava
from the
etiquettes, yeah.
Vaishnavas.
Yes. Vaishnava etiquettes is so important. And we have so many examples from our previous acharyas, right? Look at Bhaktivinoda Thakur's lifestyle. He was a complete leader, but he was a complete servant leader. He never took pride, he never misused his position, and through his example, this whole life example, he is giving us all these values about how to run the community, how to run the Bhakti Prasad, how to run the temple. So that's
and
great.
the parenting also we can learn
From him.
from the Bhakti
True.
Thakur.
True.
And the same with the Prabhupada's father.
So many beautiful words. And just discussion is reviving. I can see your mind is activated. So when you go home, also you can think of some example, and actually it comes to real life. You can always think about. So it's such a good thing.
Are we not forgetting about Krishna? He came here and he set the example for everybody.
Krishna?
Krishna.
Say more.
No, he's doing all the leaders for us, right? He did all the leaders for us, and then he's coming in, he's taking all the avatars for
Yes.
us only to
Yes.
set the examples.
Yes.
Right? To give this example.
Absolutely. That's the most important example, and that's actually coming in the next verse, 22nd verse, where Krishna is going to say that, look at me. That's what I was thinking. I will just touch base upon that verse and then we can close. But before that, I had another point. When we have this leadership position, how can we not misuse this verse? We can reflect on that, because now let's turn. Let's change the position. That now let's sit on this side, and there is one temple leader over there, somewhere over there maybe. And so we say, yad acharati shreshtas. So we say, the leader is doing this, the leader is doing that. They are not doing this, they are not doing that. And that's why we don't care. We also do the same thing. We just follow the leader, because the leader is setting the example.
Yeah. So in ICNJ, I do see the temple president. He works every Saturday. We are in that Saturday morning seva, and he comes and he does everything like us. We all do the same thing, and at the same time he is keeping an eye on each and every paraphernalia that is in the correct sequence. It's not just he is doing, at the same time he is keeping an eye that everything is in order. Oh, now please put the water, now put the garland on the Guru Parampara, where is the garland on the Narsimdev. So in order to check and balance the team so that everybody is engaged, and at the same time he is keeping an eye that 7:30 sharp means sometimes we are rushing it. It's backside we don't do anything, everything is lying there, but in the front we keep everything ready by 7:30 sharp. And he wants 7:30 message should be go into the group that we open on time. Why? Because he hear that in some other days the 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes late curtain is opening, that he doesn't like. So that's how he is setting his example. And sometimes he push, sometimes he become a hard.
So that's how, right? That's a great example, but I'm saying if sometimes there are some drawbacks, because every person is not 100%, it cannot be like God. So if they are making mistakes, we do not capitalize on those, saying that Yadacharati Shreshta, right? We should try our best to,
Also the Mataji circumstances are different sometimes.
Yes.
So some examples from Prabhupada's time that one time Prabhupada used to drink the cola. So their disciples saw that, oh, Prabhupada is drinking cola, so that's like become the fashion that everyone is drinking because Prabhupada is drinking that.
Right.
Prabhupada says, because why I'm drinking? Because I am full night, I'm waking up and writing the books. That's why I'm drinking that. So Prabhupada says, okay, I will cut. I'm saying no for me and no for you, all of them. Then similarly, one more example about the Prabhupada emphasized most of the time that every time all the disciples should attend the Mangal Aarti, do the proper morning sadhanas. So one time Prabhupada is traveling and he is writing the book at the morning full night, and at 4:30 some disciple come and Prabhupada, this Mangal Aarti started. So Prabhupada says, it's not for me, it's for you.
Right. So your good point that when we feel that there is a drawback in the leader, look at the circumstances. You cannot make a judgment because you don't know what that leader is, that Prabhuji is doing as a leader, temple leader, right? So there could be things that we don't know, and that's a very valid point. But do not make a judgment because we don't know them 100%. So this is my small paper I have. Yeah, it's here. So I was thinking maybe we can touch base upon the next verse so we can bring Krishna in as an example. So Krishna in this verse says that Name Parthasti Kartavyam Trishi Lokeshu Kinchana Nana Na Avaptavyam Nana Vaptavyam Avaptavyam Varta Evacha Karmani. So he says, O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three priority systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. So it's a great example how Krishna says that one important interesting point in this is that, see, we may discuss this next time in detail, but Krishna is actually announcing himself as God. Because in the Bhagavad Gita, in the first couple of chapters, there is no direct mention that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the second chapter, he very... sorry, excuse me.
You need long, Mataji?
Actually, I finished the long. That's his Harikatha.
She's giving.
Continue.
No, ठीक है, अभी हो जाएगा.
Continue.
So Krishna said in the 261 that Yukta asked this बदल काफी वो खत्म हो गया इसलिए slow है. No, this is fine. Yeah, so in the second chapter he only barely mentioned that Yukta Asitamat Param, depend upon me. So there he had indicated that I am God. But this is the second time or second place in the 22nd verse. He's saying that there is no prescribed work for me within all the 3 planetary systems. So in other words, Krishna is saying that I am God. And that's why I have nothing to ask for, I have nothing to gain for, and yet I am engaged in prescribed duties. And Srila Prabhupada brings a beautiful verse actually from Shvetashvara Upanishad. And I was thinking that we may recite this verse because it's so beautiful. We can look at the meaning of the verse and then we can start. It's 9:30 already. 9:30? 35? Maybe then we can cover it next time. But this is a great discussion, and if you have any other comments or questions, we can continue while we are taking prasadam. But thank you again. And Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Thank you for the opportunity, and also thanks to Siveshwar Prabhu for letting me do the class. Hare Krishna.